Nighttime hysterics on full moon. Our medicine is helpless. Bang his head against the floor. When they would do anything, they turn kids into vegetables. Imagine medicine gets into a computer with a copper beat, which kills central nervous system. First of all, we turn the consciousness on. We have found the algorithm on how to do this. Hello, this interview is unusual, first of all because the dad is telling about his perspective on autism problem, and secondly, because this person is a doctor and he tells this story through the prism of his professional knowledge. Good afternoon, Mikhail. Good afternoon. Tell us about yourself, about Vanya. What was he like and what happened next? At the present moment, Vanya is 5 years old. My name is Mikhail Gulyaev. I'm 36. I'm a clinical laboratory diagnostics doctor. I have a second pedagogical degree in supplementary education in physical education and sports. When my son was 2 years old, his state changed dramatically. Neurological symptoms appeared, but the most important, that he became very irritable. And also a lot of signs of autistic spectrum disorder appeared. And what do you attribute these changes to? He was an absolutely normal, adequate child. Everything was great. The only serious factor, after which, as it seems to me, these derangements began to intensify, was an experimental pneumococcal disease vaccination, which had been brought to our hospital. It is supposed to protect a person from this infection for the life term. And after this vaccination, the symptoms of these disorders got worse all at once. And as an addition, the signs of childhood neurosis appeared. Tell us, Mikhail, what were the clinical signs of disease? His mental development was suddenly retarded. His psychosphere immediately began to show signs of that something was going wrong with him. He had a sleep disorder. I put some notes here for myself, so I'm going to name you all the symptoms at once. I've counted more than 20 of them. He became aggressive towards the people around, towards his parents, and in general he became aggressive towards everything, towards his toys, towards different objects, towards everything that surrounded him. Then a clearly defined self-aggression appeared. He could, disregarding on his strength, bang his head against the floor, against different objects, no matter, sharp or blunt, knives or forks, it made no difference. And that is, he could completely smash his head and so on. Then the body contact with him was also disturbed. That was impossible to hold him. He fighted his parents off, I mean us. It was almost impossible to comfort him. He wouldn't let anybody in his private space. He didn't play with any toys. Didn't look into their eyes. He was afraid of new places and people. He used to have severe nighttime hysterics on the full moon, very severe. He used to bang his head for 8 straight hours. He used to fight us, to beat us, his parents. He fought with his hand like this. He resisted all our attempts to quiet him down. And this could last for 8 or 10 hours of the real. He also had movement disorder. He didn't have any fear of danger, of any danger at all, no fear of a car passing by if we were walking in the street. He didn't have a fear of heights. Then he also used to play with the water a lot. That is, he used to pour water a lot, but it was not that he was just playing with it. He splitted it, overflew it in a very strange way, not the way the kids usually play with water. This could last for hours. He used to have multiple repetitions of one and the same action. For example, he could see somewhere a kind of an episode. For example, a short video on the phone, if somebody showed it to him, and he could insist on playing it again, this short 2 or 3 second video during several hours. He freezed a lot watching different objects or actions. His attention got fixed on something, and he couldn't just drag this attention away from this. He also used to have stimming. He moved his hands in front of himself, that he could repeat the same movements with his hands in front of his face or his body for several dozens of hours. In the car, he was very afraid of new routes. If we took him somewhere in the car, under no circumstances we couldn't choose another route, another way to reach our destination point. It triggered off his hysterics immediately. It was almost unbearable. I don't really know how have we managed to survive this. Maybe it was easier for women, but for me, as for a man, it was almost insufferable. Like never-ending burning in eternal hellfire. It was like my consciousness shrank to a single point. I couldn't already understand whether I was dead or alive. Did you consult the doctors? Turn to official medicine? What was the diagnosis? Yes, we addressed to all kinds of professionals, to speech therapists, neurologists, defectologists, psychiatrists, and so on, to psychotherapists, child psychologists. As a result of this experience has proved that all those methods which were applied to Vanya, they were routine and advisory. A pedagogical commission was created which said that Vanya had a mental development delay, speech skills delay, and so on. We were told to pass a medical social assessment, so we did this, and he was diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. At first we were prescribed, the psychiatrists prescribed us neuroleptics, which almost kill the central nervous system. They turn kids into vegetables. We were prescribed with carbamazepine. I refused point blank to give my son injections of this medicine. I began to look for an alternative solution. Among the methods that official medicine suggests to us, a rehabilitation in the child center in Koltsovo was a little bit more positive. It provided more or less a multi-phased approach to children. That it physiotherapy exercise, some general strengthening exercises, some massages and so on. That is general rehabilitation orientation. In a way, it played some positive role. Unfortunately, at the present moment, our medicine is helpless. The only really effective thing it can suggest is physiotherapy exercises, classes for children in a playful form, rehabilitation classes, maybe some theater classes, and as an addition, speech therapists, defectologists, and a little bit of osteopaths. But this is already not direct medicine. Everything that refers to aggressive involvement, when the central nervous system is being suppressed by the medication, or when there is a microcurrent treatment, there is expressly strongly forbidden, because they cause the damage of central nervous system of a child. On the other hand, there was nothing provided for us. As to medication, we were prescribed with nootropics, phenibut, nootropic, and so on, and also B group vitamins, complex of vitamins to maintain the brain work, immune system, and so on. Mikhail, tell us, how did you learn about infodiving? How did you decide to try such an innovative approach, as you were among the first who participated in our experiment? I can tell you that I am a supporter of non-traditional approach. That is not to say that I am an ardent supporter of namely pure alternative science. I am simply against that really effective methods which provide the results are intentionally ignored by the doctors, scientists, and so on. The criterion of truth for me is practice. Everything that provides a result is true, personally for me. And in this context, I want to say about Natalia that I was a subscriber of her channel. I am still her subscriber. I was watching her work before. This all was very interesting for me. And I saw that she began to work. I saw a video, her first video, where she began to work with children who suffer from autism and autistic spectrum disorders. And there she read one of the feedbacks that the child had some positive changes. At that moment I was in a critical state. I would do anything. Our work experience proves that when people are in a critical state, they would do anything, absolutely anything, to change the situation, to make a difference. And they always succeed. The worst scenario is when the parents wait that somebody will change instead of them, will save them, cure them, and they don't really care about this child. If only the child gets a little bit better, so his parents will care about him less and will pay less attention to him. And in this case, when the parents don't take part in the process, the results are minimized or even missing. But when a parent comes to a stage when he would do anything, then everything will become available for him. His power resource will open for him. Power of love will open for him. Energy flow will open for him. The God will provide him with all of this. And in this vein, I decided simply to try to contact Natalia. And it just happened that she didn't refuse me, and she invited to join her project. And I'm very grateful to her for this. Because what I saw soon afterwards, it exceeded all my expectations, as I didn't expect such an effect. Maybe I still know very little, but when I faced these disorders, I read an enormous number of books about autism, and those books about working with kids which promised the results. They said that these results would be obtained only in a couple of years. And the things I have seen, they give me not just a hope today, it's better to say 100% confidence that everything will be great. The result I have today is not comparable with what I used to have. I live a totally different life today. My life has changed in such a way that I have plenty of free time now. Besides my work, I can afford to go somewhere to the theater, for example, as I used to do before. I go in for sports again, and so on. Mikhail, when you received the video of working through, what did you feel? What happened next? Yes, I received the video from Natalia. The first thing that amazed me was that how precisely the infodivers hid the situation. I didn't tell almost anything about my deep relationship between my wife and me, as we had gathered a lot of claims against each other. Because when a child is taken ill by a disease like this, I don't really know what is possible to be more challenging for the relationship, for a family life in general. This totally destroys the person's worldview and almost kills any kind of connection between the parents. It requires, I don't even know how have we managed to overcome this. So this workthrough I received, this video, those recommendations I was given, I can't say that I was able to follow them on 100%. Some important parts, about 20%, I wasn't able to put them into action. That I've completed about 80%. I have done as much as I could. After working through with kids, first of all, we turn on their consciousness, and all the rest main work is totally shifted on the shoulders of parents. Only parents should constantly look after their kids, develop them as healthy children, and then the child is successfully recovering. The results appeared almost immediately. That is from the very first days. Mikhail, tell us about your first results and the most memorable achievements. At the beginning, the very first thing that disappeared was his aggression. It was already possible to calm him down. If he used to fight and beat us before, then he began to do this less and rarely, and then he stopped doing this at all. Then he stopped banging his head against everything. This happened gradually, step by step. Then his fear of people began to disappear, fear of open spaces. Then he began to play in a sandpit. His games took a particular meaning. That is, he began to pile up, to relay something in the sandpit, to build his own sandcastles, to build tunnels, to put there his toy cars. That is, a particular scenario has appeared. He began to contact somehow with the world outside. He began to ride a kick scooter, and that simply shocked me. I couldn't believe my eyes, because he used to be afraid of such things. What is the most interesting? Then he began to dig into different gadgets. Over the past months, he has learned to turn on any gadget easily. He knows how to use them almost better than me. He even knows how to download the programs. The only thing that he doesn't speak yet. I can't even tell you how everything has been going on recently, but gradually, one after one, his symptoms were disappearing. As if some scales have fallen from his eyes. He used to walk around as if his head was covered with something, as if you can almost see this barrier, and it was impossible to break through this barrier. It seemed that my son wasn't really there. And now, it is just obvious that he is ready to communicate. He interacts with the world. It is apparent that some kindness has appeared inside him. Because when he used to be aggressive, this was impossible to recognize. And now we can notice that he is able to give us something, to make a present for us. He can even do something for us. This is already an absolutely different behavior. And now I have finally a high hope that everything will be great. The most important is that he is already interacting with the world. As for me, it is already more than I could ever ask for. Everything I need to do is to continue to occupy myself with my son. When I address myself to him, he understands me very well. During the past few days, I sent the video, I think Natalia posted it somewhere, where he is using household devices properly. He uses them according to their intended purposes. He can take, for example, a vacuum cleaner, maybe wanna play or something else, but he can take it, turn it on and vacuum something. Then he turns it off, puts together and takes it to the right place. He can take a ball, play with the ball. This is the child is able to play, to occupy himself with something. If he gets bored, he can take pencils and draw. And by the way, his drawings have changed greatly. Now he is drawing very particular, recognizable images. He can draw a dog now, and it was impossible for him before. He was not able to draw even a circle, simply a circle. And now he can draw a hedgehog, some berries. He can draw all of these now, all by himself, without any help. For me, this is really unbelievable. I have even lack of words to describe what his progress really means to me. For me, my child has completely recovered. I couldn't even dream about such results. The only problem is left is a speech problem. And by the way, in the rehabilitation center, the doctor told us, you don't have any disorders now, no autism, nothing. Your only problem is alalia. On the physiological level, a person has a particular node, which is responsible for the neural connection of speech organs with the brain. And very often after vaccination, this node inside the child remains unformed. And that is why the development of speech skills is more often blocked. And now we practice the recovery of this neural node to reactivate all the neuron connections which take part in the speech development.
Mikhail,
your case was absolutely unique. All the other children from our experiment were receiving a workthrough every week. You had the only workthrough, and after this we didn't keep in touch for 4 months. Tell us what was going on. Probably the main factor of the recovery. What Natalia said. She hit the main reason. And from my side, I did as much as I could. I didn't stop to occupy myself with my child, even for a day. I did my best. I followed all the recommendations Natalia had given to me. And maybe within this framework, because I followed all the recommendations. But I can't say that we did only this. We applied an integrated approach to this treatment. That is, we continued to give our child medication, vitamins and nootropics. I have a good attitude to nootropics. People with the brain injuries usually use them and so on. Because, as it seems to me, Vanya also had a birth injury. It wasn't defined by the doctors on time. But in the anamnesis, difficult delivery was mentioned. So to avoid, or at least to minimize the possibility of organic brain lesion and everything connected with such type of disorders, I came into a line with the doctors to prescribe my son vitamins and nootropics. So we continued this medication treatment. He took his medicine, but beside this, Natalia's recommendations, I also continued to follow them all this time. Tell us from your point of view, why is our method effective? Our present-day knowledge about this world, it is still insufficient. And it turns out that, for example, physics is able to provide only one part of the explanations about the external world, which we can see with our eyes and so on. A human body as a supersystem is explored only from the material side, and within this the medicine made a huge step forwards. From the material point of view, the human body has been studied on a very deep level. But if we move even deeper, it turns out that the reasons of some fundamental interactions remain unstudied. They are only theories, hypotheses, and so on. And it turns out that if we rely on some alternative sources, we are able to notice a particular consistency that, besides the material component, but this is only my personal opinion as a doctor, a multidimensional component of this world exists. And there were such researchers, like Bechtereva, for example, who worked in the Brain Institute. She identified the brain as a multidimensional structure, and she announced that besides the material structure, a psyche of a person has a subtle matter structure. And this was a globally renowned scientist. Then there was a candidate of medical science, Puchko. She wrote a book, Multidimensional Medicine. She suggested a biolocation method to study different pathologies in the body through the technique of influencing the field structures. This helps to identify cancer tumors, inflammatory processes, and so on. And there are a lot of other works, for example, in neurology by Rogoshkin, and so on. They provide insight into the concept of multidimensional human structure, which is multiple level structure consisting of many layers. The information that I received from Natalia is a key, as for me, a key which will join a material body component. In simple terms, and a subtle meta structure of a person. That is to join the consciousness, the soul, and the body. How do you think? What causes autism? What is its trigger mechanism? I can answer this from 2 points of view. The first one is a classical one. That is a classical medicine point of view. To my mind, a biological component is still in force. That is, it can be all types of disorders on the organic level. It can be autoimmune diseases, when immunity cells destroy the human brain structures, but also any organic damage can trigger this disease. For example, traumas, brain injuries, inflammatory brain diseases. That is everything that causes damage to the sustainability of brain structure. So this can cause the autistic spectrum disorder among children. But in terms of infodiving, the very important key aspect, as I consider, is a very serious deep problem, a problem of turning on the consciousness. What makes us human? It is exactly our consciousness. Such an image came up to my mind. Imagine a computer. You bought a computer for yourself. It is switched off. What is it? It's just a metal box with some details, a screen with some details inside. If you look on it, it is just, figuratively speaking, a body. And we can compare it to a human body, which is lying unconsciously. Okay? Let us suppose that there is already Windows installed on its hardware, BIOS, Windows, but until we plug it in, until the power is on and starts running all these programs, nothing will happen. We won't get the operating system ready, which will work, solve some problems, operate the programs, and so on. By Windows, by operating system, I mean a soul of a person, as some energy informational structure. And by the consciousness, I mean, but this is just my opinion, I don't urge anyone to think the same, the energy itself. I don't know its nature, maybe it's space origin. But this is some energy which provides this current flow, simply like electricity, which gives the opportunity to turn it on. And autistic children, they resemble such computer, which has Windows software, but it isn't plugged in. There is no electricity which will energize this. You look at such child, he is alive, but he is empty. So this is my hypothesis. And I think through infodiving. And what do? They simply plug in a computer. That's what I think. Inside a person, an interaction appears between the consciousness, soul, and body. A correction occurs which renovates the natural state of a person, his multidimensional natural structure. If we compare autistic children to a computer, just imagine a blue window popped up on your screen. However, everything is plugged in, a computer fan is spinning, it seems that everything should work well, but it doesn't. Computer doesn't work. The same happens to the psyche of autistic child. In this case, imagine medicine gets into a computer with a copper bead. It will try to resolder something instead of updating and reloading. Medicine doesn't deal with the reloading of the system, and we do. We have found the algorithms on how to do this. What a piece of advice can you give the other parents of autistic children? I want to say that if you have faced such a problem as autistic spectrum disorder among children, first of all, I wish you to be patient and to keep up your spirits. I want to say, don't give up. Ask for help those people who work on this problem. Look for alternative solutions. Try to do everything depending on you to help your children. Look for the positive experience among the other people, among those who work on this. I don't know, I wish everybody the results I've received after working with Natalia. I just recommend everyone to turn to Natalia and simply to work on the improvement of your kids. Such cases are already within reach when all the diagnoses will be withdrawn. I said to myself, as soon as the diagnosis is withdrawn, and I have already compelling reasons for this, I'm going to post all the documents on the internet. I'm going to demonstrate to public absolutely all the documents confirming diagnosis withdrawal. Medicine has been developing during thousands of years to reach the form it has now. Our methods are just 1 year old now, and we have achieved incredible results on the recovery of children's psyche and consciousness. And by combining these two concepts, we will be able to change the whole world. I wish everyone health. I wish children health. I wish Infodiving Project. I wish Natalia, her family, health, luck, and success in their future activities. I consider it to be a very important direction, and I think it has a very promising future, and it will continue to develop. Thank you, Mikhail, for the interview. Goodbye. At the present day, we have already a lot of messages where the independent specialists say that the children don't have autism, that they are already neurotypical children. We just need to wait for a while until the doctors issue an official assessment. But even without it, these children attend ordinary kindergartens, play with their peers, develop normally. Their parents are happy, and their families don't fall apart.